For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sashni Murli. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss building mutual solidarity in a time of callousness. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Now, in your column, you said that we are living in a time of callousness. Why do you say that?
I think that a lot of things are happening, have happened in the last year or two, which indicate this callousness. For example, when you know that a building is uninhabitable health-wise, and you do not take steps to evacuate the building, you then are reckless as to the consequence, and that consequence could very well be death, as it has been. It need not have been the death of the firemen in the Bank of Lisbon. It could have been deaths of the people who were in there. Also, apparently, air conditioning doesn't work in a number of these buildings that were below par, and they didn't care about it because they were not themselves working in it, although I think some top people may have been working. So what I think, that is, in my view, that life esse can either be the basis for murder charges, dolus eventualis, meaning recklessness as to the consequence, which may be death, or culpable homicide. So it's possible that these people could have charges brought against them. Definitely, I think it's possible with regard to life esse but I mean, with the case of the Bank of Lisbon, you have the situation where when these firemen get into the 23rd floor, they find that the power of the hoses is not there. There's not enough water. Water supply is not there. Now, how can you send people who are in a job which is a heroic job in the sense that they undertake to risk their lives to save others and save buildings, and you put them to risk? Now that is callousness. Life esse when you allow people to be moved without taking proper steps to ensure that there's no interruption in their medicinal needs, in their physical comfort, and all those sorts of things. That's callousness. And it's a state of mind where you do not regard your neighbor as your concern, whereas the notion of solidarity that are used is one where you suffer with the person who's experiencing oppression. You don't simply hand out aid or whatever it is. You actually identify with and you join with them in remedying the problems that they face. Now, instead, some people who gave their lives for the struggle, they didn't lose them because they're still around, but they offered everything, have become callous and indifferent.
Is one of those people Jacob Zuma?
Well, I don't want to personalize it, but he's definitely one of the people. But there's not only actually, Jacob Zuma was made possible by a lot of people. There was a surge of support for Jacob Zuma in 2006, 2007, under a false basis that he was a popular leader who cared about the poor and all these things. And the people from COSATU and SACP and the ANC who knew this was not true, nevertheless fed this untruth to the ANC and its allies. So it's not just Jacob Zuma, and they continue to support him through a range of scandals. That's why people are asking now with the State Capture Commission, this happened while a lot of other people were around. And in fact, we're finding names coming up, people who were involved in things. Now, the state capture seems to be about money, but that money is money that we don't have now to meet social needs. There's an article in the Mail and Guardian, you can download it now, by Sipho Kings about water, that 20 million people are not getting water that they should get because the money has been diverted. Now, when you steal money meant to give clean water, that is callous, because not only do people not have clean water to drink, they can't wash, they can't, water is polluted, they get cholera, a whole lot of other things. I was reading, we had a water cut the other day because of the Yeovil Dam, and then, I go and look on Twitter what Johannesburg Water is saying, and first of all, they say they've informed everyone in advance. They didn't inform anyone. They just cut the water, okay? Now, that's a sort of contempt for the public. But some man is writing there about how they get regular cuts in Yeovil. Now, where I stay in Observatory, you don't get regular cuts. He says you get regular cuts, and it means the kids can't wash when they go to school. They feel dirty. When they come, the toilet is not, they can't flush the toilet, all of this. And what I think is important is to understand, is to try and break down what it means, that it affects the poor primarily. I remember when Chris Hani was alive, and someone like myself comes from an intellectual background. I've never lived in the rural areas, and he would take what it meant to get water and break down the different things, like being able to wash yourself properly, which it's impossible to do in the conditions where the river has dried up, and even the river can be polluted. And he would explain how one thing led to another. And I think it's a war on the poor. That's the callousness.
And so what should we be expecting and demanding from our governments?
You see, I don't actually send open letters to the president and all that. Let me say, a lot of things are much better with the removal of Zuma, in the sense that they're cleaning up a lot of places where there has been corruption and state capture. But there's so much money that has been lost. They say it's $1 trillion or 2 trillion, whatever it is, huge amount of money. So there's actually been cutbacks on school infrastructure for certain things, like this pit toilet thing. They're only undertaking to remove pit toilets by 2030. One of the things we must do, a petition that I did sign, was against the government taking the decision on appeal in the Eastern Cape when they made the decision that they must remedy the infrastructure in the schools immediately. So you can sign petitions, but also in the professions, I don't know if you people belong to journalist associations. In your journalist associations, there are things you can do. You can have resolutions in support of this, that, and the other. Because I think it's not a good idea to spend our time looking to government to deliver. What we must do is look to ourselves to find ways of compelling government to get the political will to redistribute land, not get involved in constitutional changes. For 24 years, they've not hardly given any land. And that's not because of the Constitution. That is a lack of political will.
Thanks for speaking with us, Professor.
Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about building mutual solidarity in a time of callousness.